Okay, the whole topic of chronic pain, I could go down this tunnel of talking about mobility and stability, which I will a little, but I kind of wanted to approach this topic slightly differently, just to kind of help people maybe shine a light on something that might be missing. And I know if you spend any time with me, I talk about a million things. Like I talk about stretching, I talk about rolling, I talk about lymphatic stuff, I talk about neurological stuff, and you probably have all these stuff stuck to the wall and you're like, what the heck works and what the heck doesn't? And then you're usually so overwhelmed with what to do that you do nothing. Or you go to your typical go-to people, or it might be you just stick to what you know because change is scary, and what if it doesn't work, and all I want to do is make a difference. So kind of how I categorize chronic pain and everybody might have a different like outlook on it, but it's like something that hurts for a long period of time, something that tends to move around, like pain in your system. It could be any type of pain, but it's something that's like withstanding, that wants to hold on for dear life. And it might be common to you. It might go into sleep mode for a period of time. It might reappear, or it might be like the daily aches and pains of life that you've might have surrendered to. I kind of see it as there's two different views on the things that come up in our life. We will put efforts towards helping ourselves, and it might maintain it. It might just like keep it at bay. It might not make it worse. Or the efforts that you make might not be doing what you want them to. So you might, keep searching for something else, or you might just surrender to the fact that I'm old and this is how it's going to be. And like, whatever will be, will be. There's a lot of people that surrender. They're like, there's nothing I can do because I've searched out a couple, help, and it didn't make a difference. And or they might be told that it's just part of aging. It's like the people that say, oh well, you can't run, you're too old to run, or whatever. And I'm the true believer in anything is possible. And what do you want, and what are you willing to give to get there? Because when there's a will, there's a way, and it's been proven over and over again in human nature that we can accomplish big things if we put our mind to it. So I want to kind of dive into kind of like what a typical path looks like when you have some sort of chronic pain, and then a different way of looking at it. So this is where I'm gonna start my little screen share. So bear with me because this is not what I do all the time. And I have a little slideshow. And I forgot to reset it. So, okay, so I kind of describe the typical health path is very similar to you've decided to go on a dream vacation. Okay, everybody knows what it's like about dreaming about that vacation that you so badly want, right? Now, where you go from the time that you decide that you're going to go on this vacation to where you end up going, everyone will take a different timeline to get there, right? Like some people will go down a tunnel of research and it might be a really long tunnel, or some will be like, no, there's this place I've always wanted to be there and I'd go there, right? And then there's a number of things that need to happen between where you decide you're going to getting your ticket, right? And then there's a bunch of stuff that needs to happen between getting that ticket to going to the airport. And then off you go on your dream vacation. Now, what if I said you forgot your passport? Now you're probably pretty sad, right? Your dream vacation is now no longer. You're out a bunch of money, you're like, geez, and more than likely you'd have to start all over again. So the typical health path that I kind of see is that we have an owie, right? And it takes that owie can be anything from like an injury to chronic pain that we're talking about, to childbirth, to habitual patterns. Like it's just discomfort in your body. Now, everybody will take a certain amount of time before they actually seek help. Some people won't even get to the point of seeking help. And that help might be, I'm going to the doctor, I get some x-rays, you might have like some sort of diagnostics, or you might have your go-to health professional, right? And usually that will lead to some sort of treatment. And the treatment could be, massage, osteo, chiro, it might be injections, it might be meds of some sort, it could be stretches, some exercises. And then what happens is off we go to dynamic life. And now dynamic life might be just what you do. You might be a hiker, you might be, into running, yoga, fitness. And usually what happens is we get our owie again, or we still have that owie. And the cycle continues. Sound familiar? Okay, now, do you want to get rid of the owie? What if I told you that I could tell you what's missing and that I could make sure that you have your passport at the airport? So if you actually took time, or like you learned the awareness behind why you have stuff and how that applies to your body, right? There's an amount of information that kind of gets skipped before we go into life. And then how do you take that connection and that understanding and apply it to what we typically do in life? And if you do that, then you can say goodbye to your owie. And then your next problem is, what are you going to do with all your time and money? And you can, take your pick. It might be going to the yoga classes. It might be sprinting around. It might be, digging in your garden, right? But if you took time to feel better, move better, and live better, sound familiar? The FML method, right? Now, what does that actually look like? Now, you guys have heard me say, like we got to educate and we got to do this and you got to understand, and you're getting all this information. And then you're like, I still feel like I don't like, I have these epiphanies, but what do I do with these epiphanies? Right? And now there's a lot of things that need to happen, right? Education and understanding. You need to be able to explore and discover your uniqueness, right? You need to learn the why behind the details. You're an effort inventory, I call it. So like, what are the efforts that you're doing and why are you doing them? 90% of the people that I ask, why are you doing that? They don't know why. And they have no idea if they're actually doing it right. They're just making these efforts because they were told to. Right? And then you feel like you're getting nowhere. There's mobility and there's stability and there's build and play. Like this is all the FML method. Seems like a lot, right? Well, our body's pretty darn cool. And guess what? I get to be your guide to show you what's missing. So, okay, so does that all make sense? Like you can give me a thumbs up. Does it tie it together a little bit more in kind of the process in which this whole method is? Right? A lot of the stuff that we've done through this is an inventory. Right? An inventory of where your mobility problems are, an inventory of where your stability problems are, an inventory of what your efforts are, or here are some efforts that you can make, or let's create some a little awareness here. And so there's all these things that have been collected and like if you're like some people, they have pages and pages of notes because that's how they absorb it. And then the thing is now you don't know what to do with it. So we're going to get out a piece of paper and we're going to start to map this. So what I want you to do is write down like what is the thing that bugs you the most? So let's talk pain first. What is the pain that bugs you the most? And I always say, let's address the area and then we're going to look everywhere else because most places will look at the area. And most of us have had that covered. The thing is, when it comes to pain and discomfort in our body, is it usually has been festering for a period of time. right? Even when it comes to injury, why do you injure that? It's usually because it's vulnerable. Like, and what is our state in that moment? And if you have your pain area, so let's, like, for me, I don't really have a pain area, but it's more of like, why can't I get this to connect? So my biggest thing is like, I'm a rib popper. So my biggest thing is, why do I keep popping my ribs? And I teach it time and time again to come back where it belongs. Now, there's all sorts of other things that happen in my life that feed that, because that's kind of my go-to vulnerability, if that makes sense. So I kind of like think about your stress bucket. We all have stresses in life, right? It could be, tension could create you stress. It could be, sleep. It could be work. It could be finances. It could be relationships. It could be family. We all have these stresses. And I saw this analogy as it's a bucket, right? At what point does that bucket start to overflow? And then what can we do to stop it from overflowing? Because the overflowing is usually when something happens that makes us either deal with it because we haven't been dealing with it. It's not like, when someone goes to grab a pen and they blow their back, it ain't the pen. It's been brewing. But in our mind, it's like, I shouldn't have picked up that pen, but it would have been something else. Okay, so on your piece of paper, I want you to put at the top, like, if you could change anything about pain patterns, this is the part we're going after. Okay, now, can you describe that pain? Or is it just like, that's there? Can you pinpoint it? Can you touch it? And now, can you feel other areas of your body, or do you just feel that spot? Because most of us aren't in tune with our body until our body screams at us. Okay. Do you know if that pain feels better with movement or being stationary? Chances are you know. Do you know if that pain has anything to do with whether you drink water or not? Do you feel more of that pain if you're in emotional distress? Was that pain something that happened or something that happened to you? So was there an incident or is it just where it showed up? Do you know what makes it feel better? Do you know what makes it feel worse? Are there certain things that you avoid because of it? Does heat make it feel better or does cold? Does sleep make it feel better or worse? Do certain positions make it feel better? Or are there certain positions you're like, no way am I going in that position? Do certain types of exercises make it feel better and others make it feel worse? Is there different parts of the day that they feel better or it feels better or worse? Like, is it worse in the morning or is it worse at night? Or does it feel better in the morning or better at night? Does it affect your mood? And then does that have a trickle effect into what you feed yourself? Do you notice that it might feel worse based on certain foods that you eat? Do you know if it has anything to do with hormones? Right? Usually, I mean, hormones are our regulatory things. So have we tied any association with that? And it can be no, like I'm just giving you thoughts, right? What efforts do you make in your day? Now, outside of that pain, what types of efforts that you do in your day? Okay, it could be like I brush my teeth. I like, what are your efforts? Like, what are the things that you do regularly, like just naturally do? Like, I get up and I drink coffee. That's the one thing that I rush to in the morning. Now, when you start to look at the efforts that you do, and it could be like, like I have this standing date with my friend that I go walking with, and, like we all have these habitual patterns. And then do any of those efforts actually accomplish what we want to? Right? Like some of us will meet someone because it's a habit and they drain the living, you know what, out of us. Okay, so does that effort actually feed us? Or do we have to like rejuvenate from it? Or are you someone that sits at your desk and makes certain efforts? Right? Like, are you always noticing up here and do you relax here? Do you tend to squeeze your shoulders? Like, there's all these efforts. And if we actually sit back and look at the efforts that we do, right? And we always feel don't have enough time in the day, or, whatever motivates us or doesn't motivate us. But if we start to take inventory of all these things, you can usually get rid of a lot of them. And then pick ones that actually help us get where we're going or where we want to go. Now, do you have a reason behind your efforts? What have you given up as a result? Like, are there some things that you're like, that just ain't worth it? And are there things you're not willing to give up? Like, I'm not willing to give up my coffee, and I know it flares my skin. And I know it's not the best thing for my eczema, but I'm not willing to give it up because that's like my peace in the morning. I get up before the kids and I enjoy my coffee. And so I feel like I am getting other things from it rather than worrying about the inflammatory response of coffee. Now, what are you afraid of? Now, I ask this question to most of my clients, and it's usually like the second session. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? So, if you put all these efforts into things, like, so if I give you a path and we work together, like, what is your biggest fear? And it usually surprises me because it's usually not what I think it is. And most people take a moment to actually think about it. They're not thinking about that. But if you don't know what you're afraid of, but you're afraid of it in the back of your head, it's like what you resist will persist. And then what does success look like? So we're just talking just based on this, the pain that you guys picked to talk about or to look at. What does success look like? And again, that can be surprising. Sometimes we're so in it, we don't even look like there is a possibility for success. Like I remember I met with a social media girl and she asked me what my success looked like. And I bawled my eyes out because I'd never thought about it. I just been going, grinding, let's go, that I never thought, like I didn't have an end game. I was just working my ass off. And a lot of us do that when it comes to whatever's going on in our body. But if we don't know where the end game is, right? Like an athlete, maybe it's the Olympics, right? Or maybe it's always changing. It doesn't have to be that one thing. And then what are you willing to do to get there? And what are you afraid of? What do you hate? Like, what do you hate about this whole process? It might be the pain. It might be the way it makes you feel. It might be me talking all the time. And then, or it might be a certain exercise that you do all the time because you know it's good for you, but you hate it. Right? So if you do something like that and you hate every minute of it and you know it's good for you, well, guess what? It ain't good for you because you're resenting the fact that you're doing it. You're doing it because you were told to do it. And then you're just blindly doing it because you're not actually taking notice of what you're doing. You're just doing it because you were told and they're told that it was good for you. And then what do you love? Like, what do you love to do? What just fills you up? And is that pain taking away from that? Or maybe it's like a reason for you to not go do that. Or you think it's a reason not to. And then why are you not? Why are you avoiding it? It's like the whole social interaction these days. Like we were all social butterflies and we got removed from that. And now it's like hard to get back into the social butterfly scene. And you don't realize how much you're missing it until you get in it. And it took so much effort to get into it. And then you walk out feeling like, oh, so glad I did that. Which sometimes can be movement. That's why I say you can do something doing nothing. Because it usually snowballs into something else. What do you do to help yourself? It might be, I don't know, what do I do to help myself? That's a hard question. What do I do to help myself? I think it's this, right? I commit to these things because it also gets me moving, gets me thinking. Okay. Are you in a hurry? And do you give up easily? Are you motivated by pain? Usually none of us will do, well, not none of us, but most of us won't do anything until we're forced to do something. I kind of describe it as like we brush our teeth every day because we don't want to pay for a dental bill. Right? We floss sometimes, but we brush. And then we go and we get checked up, to make sure our brushing was good enough. And we'll get that extra cleaning. But we don't tend to do that with our bodies unless there's a problem. Okay, now I have a cavity. And a lot of the times we move into a house that doesn't have a foundation. And then we're wondering why we're getting kicked out of the house. So when you start to look at the pain, but then also all the other ways in which it affects your life, there's so many angles that you can go at to help your pain. It doesn't have to be movement necessarily. It could be nutrition, right? There's like, if like all of the things you've written down tells you something. So like if you're in the squat challenge, if you're in like, if you did the phases, we were taking an inventory and there were certain things that you went, ooh, I really like this. And so you kept it. And then there's ones that you were like, oh, this one really sucks, but I know it's good for me. No, it sucks for a reason. And doing more of it is not going to change the fact that it sucks. But our human nature is like, let's find the path of resistance and I'm going to get through that path as I will do it because I'm not going to give up. But we don't know where we're going. We're just in the mud and we're like clawing ourselves to the other side. We don't know what's on the other side because we haven't thought about it. We just know that we don't want to go back there. And sometimes we do just because we don't know where we're going that way. And that's fine. And then there's the whole like the guilty conscience of I haven't been keeping up or I'm not where I should be. Well, who determined where you should be? That's why wherever you are is perfect. Like I will run into clients out and they're like, oh my God, I should have booked with you. Oh my Lord, there's no guilt. Like I am here. I don't do it. I don't do it for people. I'm your guide because sometimes you're in so thick that you can't see the other side. And all I do is shine light on like the direction you should go. And I will cheer you on and I will troubleshoot and I will like give you clues to where you can go because all of this information that you've just written down tells you a path. So if movement feels better than being stationary, then you settle in a position that creates pain. That's because you're not moving very well. So blood flow likes movement. Lymphatic stuff needs movement. So your tension, your pain could be associated with the lack of blood flow you have when you're stationary. Sometimes it doesn't have to be that complicated. Well, what if you like stretching? But why are you stretching? Like there's like, I could work with people for years and years and years, and they will stick to these like whatever stretches they picked up somewhere along the way because they know they're good for them. But are they doing anything? Have you stopped? Have you ever stopped and saw if it actually does something for you? And maybe it's the fact that they can't touch their toes. Well, is that usable? Like I've talked about that. If you have a range of motion in stretching, is it actually usable? Like, so if you can get to a certain point, like stretching out your hamstrings, but then you come back to it, you're just as tight as you were before, but you don't have the ability to move your body through that range of motion, it's not usable. Like if there's certain activities that you avoid and there's certain ones that you do, well, maybe there's a mental state that's better in one than the other, right? Because we have this subconscious, like, oh, can't do that, I might hurt myself. And then if you're out with your friend, oh, look, I just went for a whole hour. Or it could be, flat surfaces versus uneven surfaces. And then if you start to tally the efforts that you do and the efforts that might not be serving you, you're probably going to realize that you might have more of the things that don't serve you than you have of actually the things that serve you. And again, now you have all this time to put towards things that will help you. And then, so the biggest thing is look at that pain, look at the feelings associated with it, right? The things you avoid, or whether you have surrendered to it, or whether you're, the efforts that will keep you by. So are those efforts on someone else fixing you or helping you? Or are they more you, like, because it can be both sides. Like, I'm all for the hands-on to help me and guide me. I use that as like, okay, if am I moving in the right direction? I have certain people that will kind of like tell me, oh yeah, things are much better there, because I can't always feel it myself. And that's important. I also know I'm a very in a hurry, high stress, eat crap at night, coffee in the morning. I'm inflamed. And it usually is written all over my face like it is today, because now it's allergy season and it's like, there goes my stress pot. It just overflowed. But I know what I need to do to get back on track. I went for acupuncture because that's my go-to, like, calm things down so I don't want to jump off a cliff somewhere. And then it's like, hey, why am I not taking care of myself? Who cares that I didn't? But now it's like, okay, I can. I just got to get back on the train, because we're all human. You add something else tends to fall off. But I know that I can add lymphatic stuff to drinking coffee. So now I'm like, because my face is inflamed, I got my toothbrush next to my coffee cup. And I'm working on that because a lot of it has to do with that. So that's the whole heat versus cold. Like, I can't put heat on inflammation. Cold is my thing. Well, that tells me there's inflammation there. Well, guess way to get things moving out of there is to create some flow. Well, I can't create flow if I'm not drinking water. So I add water with my coffee. There's easy ways to apply stuff. It's just sometimes when we step away and look at the big picture, that we might realize that we're doing a lot of things that are going against our efforts, or we're doing a lot of efforts that don't get us anywhere. So in everything that we've done and anything that you follow, that's why I'm like, if you fall off, just get on where we are. Because it's not like I'm not addressing what you may have missed. And I'll send you back there if I feel like you need it based on what's going on. But it helps you to understand where you're at if we do a little inventory. And sometimes that inventory can be super overwhelming for people, and that's fine. Skip the inventory, go straight to the work. And so, like, it's not about adding more and more and more and more and more and more. I'm just hitting it at different angles. It's all the same stuff over and over and over again. But you're going to get different epiphanies at different times, just based on where you are in life. We all have things going on, and sometimes we're not like there to listen when we may need to listen, but we'll listen when it's our time to listen, and we'll hear it differently because it got spun slightly different. So this wasn't all about chronic pain, obviously. It's more of like, step back, just step back and take inventory. Like, look at what you're doing. And chances are you won't be as overwhelmed as you may feel. It's just like, you can't go grocery shopping if you don't know what you need. You can buy a whole lot of shit and then you get home and you didn't get everything you needed. Or, you're doing a recipe and you didn't look to see what was on the recipe. Well, you're only going to get bits and pieces of it. But it'll all come together when you get all the products. Okay, I'm going to unmute you lovely ladies. If I knew how. So?
Wow.
A little different. I said I was going to be a little different.
Yeah. I look at all of those things and think, oh man, I'm missing everything.
But that's also your personality, Jean. You're always like the cup isn't full enough. Because you're always like, I should be doing this, should be. And I'm like, you just listed off about like 10 things that you are doing. How about you give yourself a pat on the back for that?
Yeah.
And that, like, all of that plays a part, right? Like, I know I work well when I got a whole lot of stuff going on. Like, when I have a few hours off, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I'm lost. And we all have to take in like that consideration that we are who we are. We're not all of a sudden going to be someone different. And we have to cut ourselves a break. But a lot of the times the pain that we feel has something to do with that too. And that's the whole, like, we could go down the deep, like, tunnel of, energy and la 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 la. And I believe all of that plays a part. You can't have pain in one area and not have the whole rest of your body a part of it. It's just like, people will come in and they'll tell me they've got back pain and the, hips. And then we start to get into it. And I find out that they've had abdominal surgeries. They might have like incontinence problems, and they don't feel like that's part of it. Right? Or they could have had like a kidney stone, and like all of our organs live in this area. And if something's been removed, there's now an empty space that your body has to adjust to. So there's so many things, right? And like, then, you talk about all like cholesterol and like heart stuff and like, asthma and all of that plays a part. Because if you have trouble breathing, you're going to have a lot more stress in your system. But that doesn't mean you can't do stuff to help that, like beyond, what the medical system would do. But we don't, like, it's just stand back and look at the big picture and realize that it's like there's a story, there's usually a theme. Like, it's like when I give or do an assessment on someone, I throw so much stuff, but I'm looking for a theme. Where's the theme? Like, we take you through all sorts of stuff, and I'm just looking for the theme. Because that's what matters. You just need to find the theme in life. Like me, I'm either all in or I'm out. Any questions over there, Bonnie? Are you still there?
No, this was good, actually. It made me think about some things.
Yeah, I think the biggest epiphany was like, what does success look like to you? I was like, I don't know. Well, crap. And then I started crying. It was like with some stranger, because I was like, I never thought about it.
No, I think that's true for most of us, probably, in some respect.
Yeah, we're just living in the chaos.
Yeah.
And if we actually get out of the chaos to look at the picture, it's not that chaotic.
Actually, the bit about like the food and inflammation, that's actually, yeah, that's interesting too. I haven't really thought about that too much.
Yeah, and so that's another reason why this is on top of my mind is because we're doing that. Well, the next challenge is a wellness challenge, and we're going to dive into all that stuff like skin, because I, like, me personally, like, diaphragm stuff is magical for me. Like this whole rib thing, well, my whole life I've had this crease here that everybody thought I had surgery, because I had, like, as a young kid, learned to grip with my two upper abs. So, like, this is a lifelong, like, habit I created, which created digestive stuff. But I also, like, had too many antibiotics as kids. So I had all these things that just destroyed my gut and created, like, and I'm like, eczema, stress on my face, and it shows up here first because I'm holding in my feelings. So, like, I've had such an like, I mean, you just go down one path and you learn something, you go down another path and you learn something, and like, a lot of the stuff that I've learned is based on, struggles in my life or in my kids' life, or, like, the whole neurological, like the primitive reflexes, like, some of the stuff is just, if it's hard, take a different path. Like, don't beat it till it's dead. And it doesn't mean that those efforts were for nothing. It just might be there's one little thing that shifts it all. Like, for me, I did a landmark, which was like the forum. And that was like ding, oh, I get it. And I'd always gotten a lot of stuff out of, like, all the other, like, counseling and, like, yoga retreats and all, like, I always got stuff out of that, but it just brought it all together for me to process it.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
linking all those things. For me, that's very true.
Yeah, for all of us. Because we get so narrowed in on the ow. And the ow typically is not the problem.
Yeah.
It might have been at one time, but it's usually there because of stresses. You got to realize stress is what our body's telling us. And it can show up. Everyone manifests stress in a different way. Right? But with stress, you can guarantee that there's some sort of labored breath, some sort of inflammation, some sort of restriction, and, like, fight or flight response. That's why I do so much breathing stuff, because people don't realize how powerful it is, because it affects your digestion. It affects, like, so many factors. It massages your organs. It helps so many things in your body. And it could be as simple as taking time to smell the air. And if you haven't learned that trick yet, Bonnie, it's a good one.
I haven't learned that trick yet, Jamie.
Just literally take time to smell the air, and it brings your breath all the way down.
I'll have to think about it. The air is particularly pungent out here these days. So.
Do you want to smell it?
And I'm, like,
That's a good
teaching it to
question. Yeah,
some,
exactly.
yeah, and I'm teaching it sometimes to people who are wearing masks. So I'm like, forget the fact that you have a mask on. Smell the air. But that's just as powerful as pinky power, right? Like, your body is so cool. And every time I have a pain, I'm like, cool, I get to figure something else out.
That's not how I feel about it.
No, but it's because you don't have the confidence to play and fiddle. It's more like, ooh, I'm not gonna do anything because I might make that more mad.
But I think we're conditioned to compartmentalize too, right? Like it's an unnatural thing to think about the unrelated and the broader parts of things, right? And how they're linked. Like we're kind of conditioned to say, "Oh, my knee hurts because my knee hurts," or whatever, right? and don't look beyond that. So it's a bit of a mind shift.
Yeah, it really is. And it doesn't mean that that knee that's hurting isn't important,
Yeah.
but you got to look outside that.
But that's always, I think that's the hard part, because I think sometimes we don't realize, well, we don't realize what the signs are and what the body's telling us either, right?
Which is why you need a guide or like someone
That's
you
true.
go to that, and it doesn't have to be me, but it's someone that knows you enough that can give you some direction.
Yeah.
And I have different people for different situations. And sometimes I don't get the answers I want, so I find somebody else.
Find somebody to tell me the answers I want.
Yeah. Or like I get a different view. It's like, no, it's not really, something's not shifting. I need a different perspective. Like I've started like learning about Nuka Cairo. I don't know why it took me this long, but there's a Nuka Cairo in Airdrie. And so she's taking me through her process because I like dropped like she was interested in what I was doing. I dropped off some whatever stuff here in Airdrie. And like it's really cool. Like it's so not what I thought it was. And I have lots of clients that do Nuka Cairo.
What
What
is it?
is Nuka Cairo?
It's they literally focus on the top 2 vertebrae of your spine. And they do all of their adjustments. So your first one is like they'll talk to you, they put you like look at your alignment, and they have like a machine and they'll give you degrees and they give you a score, which I think is kind of cool because it helps people see how the shift, where I'm more like eyeball it. So she looks at similar things than I do, but their belief is if you're aligned, if your top 2 vertebrae are aligned, then everything else will fall into place. And I was like, okay, prove it. Yes. And it's super subtle. So they do x-rays in a bunch of different positions and they look, and everything is like, they literally have like a protractor out to see the degree in which, like she literally, what it feels like I lie on my side, and what it felt like is like she pulls on my ear for a couple seconds. That's it. That's the adjustment. It's super subtle. So most is like chronic headaches, vestibular stuff. Like those are the people that have been through the system and they're in chronic pain. But she believes in alignment, but she believes that movement comes from the pelvis, where I'm like, that's me. So we're really like, so that's Thrive Thursday. So I'm going to be speaking. She does once a month Thursday thing, kind of similar to this. So she's bringing me in to talk to her people about core.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So then you go back and they check your alignment, and they'll only adjust you if your alignment's off. And then it gets you get further apart from the times they check. But it's weird. Like I'd lie there and I always have one leg a little shorter than the other because of the adjustments I've made because of my knee. And she like pulled on my ear for 2 seconds and that went away. I was like, okay. It's about. So it's for, like, I see it as it's for the sensitive people, right? That chiro adjustments are too intense. But I also see like that's just a small part of it, because that's just your top 2 vertebrae.
So do they check all of your vertebrae when they do the x-rays and all that, or is it just your neck?
No, just your neck. But they'll like she takes you through all sorts of neurological tests, and like it's 2 to 3 hours. So it's quite the experience. It's kind of neat. I see a place for it. And she wants to bring in my stuff because she sees the benefit, like, because I'm a gentle, where most of her people are gentle. Yeah, it's just like there's osteo, like there's so many different osteos that do different things. And like, but the thing with Nuka is they all do the same adjustment. They might just have additional tools that they use. But she's like, if you go to another NUCA, the adjustment will be exactly the same, which I find interesting.
Would the assessment be the same too?
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's just their additional tools. So she actually uses PhysiTrack too and gives some exercises and that kind of stuff to complement what she's doing. Yeah, it's interesting.
Interesting.
Another one of those interesting things. Same with like body talk and like there's so many different cool things that it's just find your people.